There once was a big Buddhist temple where students learned from a wise teacher. But instead of focusing on meditation and growing spiritually, the students spent a lot of time gossiping. One student talked a lot. He gossiped, shared stories he heard while getting food, and bragged about himself. He often said he came from a rich family and could have had an easy life, but chose to find truth instead. One day, the teacher decided to test his students. He told them each to pick a challenge for a month, something hard to do. If they failed, they could go back to their old ways. Each student picked a challenge, but the braggart student went to the teacher and said, "Give me the hardest challenge, something special." The teacher smiled and said, "Can you really do a challenge I give you?" The student, full of pride, said, "Of course, teacher. I can do anything." The teacher smiled again and said, "All right then, don't talk for a whole month." The student scoffed and said, "That's easy. Give me a real challenge." The teacher insisted and said, "Try this challenge first." The student bowed to the teacher and stopped talking. At first, it was easy, but with each day, it got harder to stay silent. By the second day, he felt uncomfortable, and by the third day, he felt uneasy. On the fourth day, he really wanted to talk, especially seeing the other students chat freely. Because he talked a lot naturally, it was hard for him to stay silent. As the days went by, the silence became too much for him, and he couldn't take it anymore. He went to the teacher and wrote, "Teacher, I can't be silent anymore. It's driving me crazy. Please let me break my promise." The teacher spoke calmly and said, "I didn't force you to do this, so I can't make you break it. It's up to you. Many other students have already broken their promises. If you can't keep it, that's okay. But remember, following through on your promises makes your mind stronger and helps you learn more." The student felt hurt by the teacher's words and went back to his room. He locked himself in and spent most of his time alone. Even though the other students were gossiping and talking around him, he stayed silent, surprising everyone at the temple. After a few days, he went to the teacher again and wrote, "Teacher, I'm silent on the outside, but my mind keeps talking on the inside. I'm struggling with my thoughts." The teacher told him that as long as he stayed at the temple, the noise from the other students would keep bothering him. So, he should go somewhere quiet. Following the teacher's advice, the student left the temple and went to the nearby forest. A month passed, and the time for the student's challenges was over. But the braggart student still hadn't come back to the temple. This worried the other students. They thought he might have been attacked by wild animals while wandering in the forest. However, the teacher stayed hopeful. He felt there was a good reason why the student decided to stay away from the temple. 2 months passed, but the student still hadn't returned. Everyone at the temple lost hope, believing he had been eaten by wild animals. Even after 3 months, there was no news of him. Slowly, they began to forget about him. Then, one day, the student suddenly returned to the temple. This caused a lot of surprise and joy for everyone there. But he seemed different now. He had a calmness and peace about him that wasn't there before. Excitedly, the other students surrounded him and started asking him questions. They noticed he wasn't as impatient or talkative as before. His words flowed smoothly and kindly. After talking with the other students, the student went to the teacher, bowed down to him, and asked, "Teacher, am I still silent? Is my challenge still going?" The teacher looked at him carefully and said, "Yes, you are still silent. Your challenge is still on." The other students were surprised and asked, "Teacher, he's talking to you. How can you say his challenge of being silent is still going?" The teacher calmly explained, "Yes, he's speaking, but his mind is completely silent inside. That's why I say his challenge is still on." Then, the teacher turned to the student and asked him about his journey over the past 3 months. The student began to share, "Teacher, when I left the temple, I seemed silent, but my mind was always thinking. I hoped the deep forest would help quiet my mind, but my attempts only made it more restless. Eventually, I stopped trying to forcefully control my thoughts and started observing my mind without judgment. Slowly and slowly, my mind began to calm down, and the restlessness started to fade away. I started to realize my past mistakes, like gossiping about others, considering myself superior to others, and talking unnecessarily. As I was observing my mind was becoming free of impurities. As I delved deep into my mind and carefully watched every thought that arose, I noticed something significant happening. The constant chatter in my mind started to quiet, bringing a sense of calmness and peace. Gradually, my mind became empty, and I lived in the present moment, experiencing true silence and peace. Then suddenly, I started to fear losing these moments. But then I realized that fear itself was just a thought of the mind, and I am not the mind. I am the observer. Then, looking at his master gratefully, he said, "Master, all thanks to your guidance that I attained this peaceful state of mind." The master blessed him and then addressed all the other disciples and said, "You see, I always told you that forcefully quieting the mind is not the answer. But by becoming a witness to our thoughts, we can naturally quiet the mind over time and stop its chattering." If we look at our own lives, we'll find that we all crave peace of mind but often struggle to achieve it because we don't understand the nature of our own mind. We try to control our thoughts forcefully, not realizing that this only makes our mind more restless. But when we start to watch our mind's activities, it starts to calm down. Like if a thief knows that someone is watching him, then he cannot steal. Similarly, when we start to watch our mind, it stops wandering here and there and stops chattering. Therefore, instead of trying to control our thoughts, we need to observe them without judgment, like watching a river flow by without getting caught up in each wave. This practice, known as mindfulness, involves simply being aware of our thoughts as they arise and letting them pass without getting entangled in them. By practicing mindfulness regularly, our minds gradually become calmer and less cluttered with thoughts. This allows us to navigate life challenges with greater clarity and creativity. We discover hidden talents within ourselves and find a deeper sense of peace and contentment in the present moment. So if you want to quiet your mind and experience true peace, then take a moment to find a quiet place, close your eyes, and simply observe your thoughts as they come and go. With patience and practice, you will find that your mind naturally becomes more serene, and you will uncover a new sense of tranquility in your life.